Hello, hello. How's it going, folks? Welcome back for another weekly edition of Mandolin Mornings here. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope everything's coming through loud and clear for you this morning. Let me know where you're coming from in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, it's been a good week so far. I hope you guys have had a really nice time playing some mandolin this week. And for the month of January, it's hard to believe that this month is already over. I feel like I've just blinked and the past year has gone by in a weird way. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but it feels like, I think they're just flying in a weird way being at home, which is kind of good, just thinking about how you can make, I guess, little incremental changes in your day-to-day practice sessions to hopefully benefit your future self. It's like something just a little bit every day goes a long way to making a big impact down the line, I think. I remember hearing about this quote from, I think it was Albert Einstein, who talked about how man's greatest failure is not understanding the depth of compound interest, or what a huge impact that really is. And that's what I've been feeling recently. It's like it's just a little something every day goes a long way to build up that interest towards getting better at the mandolin or learning fiddle tunes or anything like that. And yeah, I just thought we'd start out today maybe a little bit different than we've done in the past live streams. And I want to share with you what I've been practicing over the past month here. You guys have probably heard I've been doing this challenge where I've been playing mandolin 2 hours a day, every day. That's my goal for this year. And so far I've been able to make it just barely. There's been like a few times that I've cut it close, but thankfully I've been able to get those 2 hours in. And so glad to hear that you guys have been practicing too. I admire Lucy practicing until 11 at night the other night. That's awesome. Keep up the good work. And we talked a little bit how I structure my practice sessions. If you haven't seen it, you can check out my practice productivity video that I did last week, where I basically just wrote down everything that I'm going to practice throughout the week and used some categories from a really great book called The Musician's Way as a nice way of kind of structuring things and making sure that I'm practicing the right things to keep getting better on the mandolin. And this week I've been doing something similar. I've just been kind of using those 5 categories as a way of organizing my material and breaking up my time into certain sections. Then I'm actually just using the timer on my phone here to kind of keep myself accountable. I love using timers just to feel like I can have an on and off switch for my attention span in a weird way. Otherwise, I feel like I have to practice something too far, too much, or too little, if that makes sense. Whereas I set a timer for 15 minutes, just like, okay, I can just go at it and work away for 15 minutes, knowing that maybe I won't accomplish everything, but I'll have a really invested, focused time with my mandolin in those 15 minutes, which is, I think, what we're after in the long run. But anyways, on a specific level, what I've been practicing this week are a lot of scales and a lot of arpeggios, which I know everyone, kind of hates practicing those. Maybe I'm a little bit weird, but I really enjoy practicing scales and technique stuff. And that's something that, I don't know, I'd love to talk more about with you guys if you're up for maybe a little nerdy discussion here at the beginning of Mandolin Mornings. But scales and arpeggios are kind of like the main building blocks that we have as vocabulary for playing over anything. It doesn't matter if it's bluegrass or classical music or anything like that. It's just the way that music works. If you know the scale, you know what notes you have to work with in the song that you're playing. And I've been talking a little bit about this in some of the videos we've been putting out for the fiddle tunes we've been learning, like Cold Frosty Morning and St. Anne's Reel and Bury Me Beneath the Willow. And that's so important just to know the scale, because I don't think about scales as like a linear exercise where you're just going straight from one note to the octave of the next note and all the notes in between. I'm kind of thinking about it more as a group of notes that you have available to play in that certain song, and you can use those notes to rearrange and imagine new ideas over the chord changes to that tune that you're playing. So like G major, for instance. We love that scale, right? That was probably the first one that I learned. Maybe you're the same. But there's more to it than just that one little linear idea going from that G to that G. For start, you can start playing in different octaves, right? You can play all the way up to that high G right there to get 2 octaves. And I like playing at least 2 octaves at a time like that, because it kind of gives you almost a certain territory that you have available to you. That way, once you've learned the G major scale, you can basically play anything in that key in this first position here. That's kind of what we call this area where we play close down to the net with the open strings, like we normally do whenever we're playing a fiddle tune, right? So all those notes in the first position fit within that G major scale, and whenever I'm playing a tune in the key of G, I can just use those notes appropriately. So what I've been doing is to try to push myself beyond that first position, because I've been playing here for a long time, like over a decade, and I still don't feel like super comfortable playing up the neck. Maybe you guys can relate to that. I don't know, it's just so kind of intimidating up there and kind of scary having to use your fourth finger so much. So it's been something that I've been thinking a lot about, something that I've been trying to push myself to get better at. And one thing I've been doing is practicing scales like this in a certain key, like G major, and playing them up the neck in other positions. Someone asked me about this recently on Patreon, on our Discord hangout, wondering what position scales are. This is something I picked up from a book called The Advancing Guitarist, which is a really interesting resource, not only for guitar players, but also for mandolin players. But it's this idea of trying to learn all those notes for a certain territory, a certain key that we're in, and seeing if you can play those notes in a new position. So instead of just playing it here in the open position for G, you could maybe play it with your index finger starting on that second note of the scale, playing it all in closed position here. And then, just shifting this up. So even if you could start now on the third note of the scale, play all those 7 notes, the same 7 notes in the G major scale, now just starting on the third note of the scale here, this B note. And then, you kind of see where this is going. You can go up to the fourth note of the scale, to the fifth note of the scale, to the sixth note, to the seventh note. And if you want to, you can go all the way up to the octave, way up there on the 12th fret. But, by the time you've gotten through those first 7 notes, you've played pretty much all the positions that are feasible on the mandolin. Like, I don't find myself playing any higher than that on anything that I'm playing there. And I don't know, it's so freeing to see those patterns that are happening from one position to the next. It's all, again, the same 7 notes that we have in G major, but I'm just kind of rearranging them depending on where I am on the fretboard. And I know some people talk a lot about, I think it's called the FFCP, the 4-finger closed position method, which they talk a lot about for jazz music. That's actually personally something I haven't explored too much. I know there's some similarities to what's going on here to that method and to some other fretboard mapping methods as well. But what I'm doing, I feel like if it helps me see the bigger picture for a song that I'm working on, especially for bluegrass music. If we'll relate this back to a fiddle tune now, just thinking about like a good tune in the key of G, like Big Scioto is my fall back tune in the key of G that I always play. And thinking about like, okay, if I'm playing over this tune, first off, there's like lots of places that I could play this melody up and down the neck, like instead of just playing it here, maybe I could play it up here in this, what some people call the third position, on the 5th fret with your index finger. Or you could play, the same shape up here in, I guess this would be like how many positions up would this be? 4 or 5, the 6th position. Or even just trying some different fingerings, like you could try it here as well. So, just by mapping out the fretboard with these positions, I feel like I have a much better feel of how to do that. I can see where these melody notes kind of intersect in different places up and down the neck. So I've been really excited about that. But I've been trying to push myself, again, more away from just doing linear devices, just playing up the scale and then back down the scale, up the scale and back down the scale. So if there's any real theory nerds out there, here's something that I've been doing as well. Seeing if I can play through the scale with a scale pattern, or some people call these like folded scales, where like one I've been playing recently is a really basic one where you're just going up the scale in the interval of a third, where you're starting with the root note of the scale, you're going up to the third, the third note on that scale, which is B, coming back to the note that you skipped, and then back up to the fourth note of the scale, and so on and so forth through the whole scale. And something else that I've been adding into this exercise to make myself think about it even a little bit more in depth is trying to shift up after ascending on one part of this position here, one position, and then playing the next position down, shifting up, playing the next position up, shifting up, playing the next position down. I know it sounds kind of weird. Let me just show you what it looks like here. So I go up the first position here. Back down in closed position. Up the next position. Oops, something like that. And then, back down the next position up. So, by the time you've done all that, you've seen how all those positions link together in kind of two difficult degrees of variance there. You've seen how you're adding in this scale pattern and also seeing how you're shifting at different positions to get from one position to the next, if that makes sense. I know that's probably a lot. And, if this is way above where you're at, I totally understand. I was just excited about like how all this stuff is kind of connecting in my brain. I guess I'm seeing the dots connect in new ways as I play through this stuff, which is really, I think, the most exciting thing about playing music in a lot of ways is seeing how all these things, they're related. And the more you kind of get that big picture idea of how music works, the easier it is to play a fiddle tune like Big Sayota in a weird way. It's like all that stuff really fuels your experience with whatever real piece of music that you're playing on. So let me catch up with the comments here. I know you guys are thanks so much for hanging with me through all this nerdy stuff. You guys are awesome. We got a lot of folks on the stream today, so thanks for tuning in. So we got a couple questions. Francois says too much drooling. I know, like I probably drool and I'm actually practicing this here. Let's see. Paul Marshman says, being a guitarist, I find it hard to get used to the patterns up high on the mandolin neck. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest struggles about this exercise is seeing how you can squeeze your fingertips into those tiny, tiny little fret spaces up the neck as you keep going, because there's not a whole lot of room up here past like the 10th or the 12th fret. To be honest, I don't play much higher than that. When I'm just playing on my own, I probably play mostly in the third or the fourth position as probably the highest place that I would get to when I'm playing. But with this exercise, I've been forced to play a little bit higher, where I'm playing up to like at least the 15th fret with my fourth finger there. And there's been an interesting thing that's kind of happened in my experience. Like I've been practicing this stuff every day for the past 30 days, which is more than I've ever practiced this stuff before, just because of this stupid challenge that I gave myself, which has been great, having some accountability to actually get better at this. And even in the past 4 days, I've noticed an increased precision in where I place my fingers as I get higher up the neck with these scales and the arpeggios that I'm working on as well. So I think the answer is just doing it. I know that sounds so brash or so, I don't know what the right word is. It just doesn't, seem very delicate, but it's really the answer to the issue. Even if you have really big fingers or really big hands, I think it's still possible to make this work. All it is getting used to that sensation of playing on the fretboard and getting that right spacing. Because obviously there's great mandolin players who have all sorts of different shaped hands that can do this and play it well, like Mike Marshall or Sierra Hull or people that I talk about who have varying degrees of different size hands who are awesome. They're so amazing. So I would say like try to push past what you think might be limitations, and you might discover that those features about your anatomy or those features about your style are actually kind of the big defining features of your artistic sound. I know I talk about this a lot, but I think that's such a cool idea. Like John Hartford said that your musical voice is basically just figuring out how to operate within your limitations. So, you might find that it's not as easy to play up the neck, which is totally fine. You don't have to play up the neck, but I think that you might be able to find new ways about approaching further up the neck that might make you sound even more unique and more individual. So that's my 2 bits about that there. But so the Pelican 3 says those scales are something good for me to work on. I'm so glad, man. I'm glad to hear that people are tracking along the same page here. And Francois is asking, how fast do I go when I play these scales? And that's a great question too, because I think I was talking with a student recently about how whenever you practice, you kind of want to wrap in a lot of different musical aspects into that one subject that you're practicing. So scales, for instance, isn't just a single faceted exercise. Scales are great for practicing a lot of different things, and tempo is a huge thing, right? Like practicing at different speeds, practicing with different metronomic devices to help you internalize the tempo a little bit better. Like I'll pull up my metronome here. I've been using this really interesting app called Tempo that has some cool features to it. But it's funny, I have 2 metronome apps. One of these metronome apps really bothers our little puppy, which is hilarious. It's just like the different tone of the click. But the other one doesn't bother him at all. He can like sit next to me while I practice for hours and he'll just like sleep. Anyways, I'll play the one that he doesn't like, so if you hear him barking, you know what's up. But what I do is usually just turn up my metronome to about 100 beats per minute. That's where I'm starting to feel more comfortable with this. I didn't feel comfortable there at first. I think I started out around 70 beats per minute and worked my way up little by little, using the circle of fourths as a way of getting from one key to the next. So basically, I've been practicing this around all 12 keys, all 12 major keys that we have. And then, every time I get all the way around the circle of fourths, I might bump up the tempo a little bit more, or try a little bit faster the next day to see how I'm going. But about right where 100, that's right where I'm feeling it right now. I want to push myself faster. I've done a little bit at 110, a little bit at 120, but things start to unravel a little bit, which I think is okay. It's fun to like push yourself to get to that point where it feels like things are starting to come apart, because that's an area that you want to really push yourself into to make it feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more familiar, so it doesn't feel that way next time you come back to that speed. But some interesting things that you can do here, instead of just playing with the metronome on every other beat like this, like when you're playing at 100, I like to feel it as a half note click, where you're playing basically 4 eighth notes per click on the metronome, right? I haven't had enough coffee. I'm dragging behind the click there, but you kind of get the idea. But one thing that you could do is, why don't you just cut that tempo in half, right? Like, what if you play this at 50 beats a minute? That way you're hearing the same rate, the same tempo, right? But now you're hearing half as many clicks. You're hearing 1 click per beat. And this is something I try to do a lot, because it's removing the metronome as a crutch. Some people might even, play with the click on every single beat for every quarter note in the measure, which would be like 200 here, which is really excessive. It's so annoying, and it doesn't give you any wiggle room to actually train up your own sense of time, right? Right? It doesn't really give you much, I don't know, training or much support beyond just that incessant reference there. So if you were to bump this down all the way to 50, this would be a much better way to practice it, where you're kind of having to fill in the gaps on your own. You're training up your own internal sense of metronomic time. Like, let's see if I can do this. So a lot more difficult, but it kind of gives you, I don't know, it weans you off the metronome in a way. And you can keep doing this. Like, what if you went down to 25, I guess, where you'd be hearing a click for every 2 measures, or maybe it's every 4 measures, I forget. I think it's every 2 measures here. Oh man, it's so long in between those clicks. Here we go, let's see if I can do this. Got on there by the end, but it's really hard to kind of even get started, right? I don't know. I definitely recommend doing that, because again, if you're working on this timing stuff while you're working on a challenging other aspect of your playing, like scales, then it's gonna get you more bang for your buck, right? You're getting more out of that shorter period of time because you're working on different aspects at once. Another thing I like to do as well is try to think about dynamics when I'm playing, because you can think about timing, you can think about the scales, and you can still think about dynamics all in one. So practice playing these scales really loud. Like, that's something I've been trying to do more of recently. I've been realizing that whenever I play on my own, I kind of play a lot quieter than I probably should. Because when I come to that jam, not that we've been jamming much recently, but whenever we do get back to the jam, I find that I definitely have trouble hearing myself amongst all the other noise that's going on, right? If you're playing with banjo players, fiddle players, or even just like 8 mandolin players chopping behind you, it's hard to really project in a way that makes it easy to hear yourself and what you're playing, as well as allow other people to hear what you're doing to be able to follow you better. So practicing loudly in the practice room, I know it sounds kind of weird, but it really changes so much. Like, try to practice at that same level that you'd want to perform something, or that you'd want to jam something at, and maybe even bump it up an extra notch too. That way you're kind of building up some extra strength for your right hand to be able to push through without tensing up whenever you get into those tough situations. So I know that's a long answer, Francois, but hopefully that's helpful. Just thinking about those different aspects as you keep playing through some of these things. We've got a couple more questions here. So James William Houghton says, I have huge hands. They must look so strange on the mandolin, but I find it doesn't stand in the way at all. That's great to hear, man. Yeah, I think it's like, it's all about perception, right? I don't know. It's like, if this the idea of having hands that are too big to work on the mandolin might keep you back from actually doing the things that you can do, which is kind of interesting. It's like, why start with that presupposition that, oh, I can't play because my hands are too small, or my hands are too big, or I can't move my fingers fast enough. That's already kind of believing a lie that you don't know whether it's true or not, I guess, in some way. So, just starting with this idea of be like, okay, let's just see what happens. And, if it is challenging, how can I troubleshoot here to make things easier for myself, and just take it as it comes, which I love. Man, I love that mentality, James. That's awesome. Brian Purdy says, new patron here. Awesome, man. Thanks so much for supporting the Patreon page. Says, can you speak to your latest tips on getting the full 4-finger G chop chord clean and common hand positioning mistakes you see students make when trying to achieve that chord? So that was a very, very well worded question, Brian. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'd love to, man. That's something that we've been talking a little bit in some of the videos with these tunes that we've been learning, right? We've been, looking at the open chords and the chop chords that would be, really good options for you to learn the chords for any of these tunes we've been looking at. And I did a few videos on the chop chord shape, which, I'm just kind of like spouting out a bunch of ideas that may or may not make sense to some people. But, I just to refine my thoughts a little bit on that topic, I think probably the most important thing, again, is just to try it as much as possible. Like, get these under your fingers as much as you can, and to do whatever feels comfortable. And I know that's maybe a cheap answer to what you're asking there, but what feels most comfortable to me, which may not be the same for everyone, since I do have longer fingers and kind of bigger hands to work with here. I don't really choke up on the neck or bend my wrist in at all. I just kind of finger my fingers really lightly on the frets there, and then I keep my wrist straight with my thumb pushing against the back of the neck as a counterweight to pull my fingers into the fretboard. But some people prefer to choke up like this, and I see a lot of mandolin players do this, where they have kind of the back of the palm of their hand make contact with the back of the neck, and it doesn't seem to bother them. So it just depends on how you feel tension in your left hand, like what's causing the problems, and just doing a lot of experimenting, kind of taste testing with different wrist positions, different finger positions to see what's the most helpful. But just a couple other things that might be helpful too is just thinking about your finger position. Like, instead of having your fingers parallel to the fretboard like a lot of guitar players talk about, I think we want to have our fingers bent over at about like a 45-degree angle like this, much more like violin players in this respect. That way you're actually going to have a lot more reach with your pinky in particular to get that 7th fret on the G string here. So if I have my fingers parallel to the fretboard, I can't even make that shape at all, right? It's like really, really difficult. Whereas if I tilt my fingers over at about a 45-degree angle like this, they kind of fall into place a lot more naturally. And one last thing I'd recommend here is try playing these shapes up the neck. I didn't talk about this too much in those videos, but I'd say like if you play the B major chop chord instead of the G major chop chord, which is the exact same shape, but now you have your middle finger on the 7th fret of the E string, it's going to be way easier to get familiar with this chop chord shape because the frets are a lot closer together, kind of like what we've been talking about. You can even find a chop chord higher up the neck. You can do like the E major chop chord way up there with your index finger on the 12th fret if you wanted to, because that would be even easier in some ways because the frets are right there, really close to each other. So I just practice that, and whenever you're sitting down and watching TV or watching like a movie or something like that, like me and my wife just started that WandaVision series that's on Disney Plus, which is kind of interesting. Just grab your mandolin and just practice making these shapes with your left hand. You don't even have to play them with your right hand, but just kind of get comfortable with those positions. Maybe even like work your way through a chord progression in particular. I think it's always helpful to relate this stuff back to a real piece of music. So if you're working on Bury Me Beneath the Willow or Cold Frosty Morning or whatever it is, just see if you can make those chord shapes and get used to the transition from one chord to the next, because that's another one of the big challenges here, is making sure you can get to the next chord on time without slowing down or dropping a beat. So thanks so much for joining Patreon, man. I really appreciate it. By the way, if anyone else is interested, I've got a link in the description below where you can find out more about what we're doing on Patreon. There's lots of stuff going on over there, and that might be a good segue to our Mandolin Weekly segment of the stream here. Let's see if this is working this week. There we go. Yeah. So on Patreon, we've got lots of stuff going on. We have these weekly live streams. If anyone's interested, you can become a patron and gain access to past live streams that we've done before, because all these live streams are public for the time being, but they get unlisted as soon as the stream is done. But you also get access to like the PDF transcriptions to all these lesson videos, and we've been doing these backing tracks, which I'm really stoked about. I hope you guys have been enjoying these. Let me know what you think in the comments below too, because I'd love to hear if these are helpful for your practice sessions. We've been doing 3 different tempos for all the lesson videos so far this year. We've been doing, I think it's like 60 beats per minute, 80 beats per minute, 100 beats per minute, which is kind of fun. Like you get kind of some beginner, intermediate, and advanced speed levels, and then you can change this further if you import it into like the Amazing Slow Downer or whatever to adjust the tempo without changing the keys. So I hope this has been enjoyable so far. But yeah, tons of other stuff. I see you guys have been checking out Macedonia. That's awesome. That was a lot of fun. Me and Tristan have been trying to do something like this for a while, and it's taken us a little bit of time to get it all worked out. I think he contacted me about it like last year sometime, and we've just been so busy with the holidays and with all sorts of other stuff going on. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and we got Tabitha to join us as well, which was really fun too. And let's see what else we've got going on here. We've been doing some transcriptions from my record, The Golden Angle, as well as my record, Into the True Country, which has been great. This week, we looked at The Red Room, which is a tune of mine that you actually heard at the beginning of the stream here when we were doing the countdown. So that was really fun. Got Stuart Duncan playing fiddle on that, Wes Corbett on on banjo. Excuse me. And a bunch of other fun stuff going on. And then we also checked out Cold Frosty Morning, which I hope you guys got a chance to look at that lesson as well. I've been enjoying doing these kind of longer form lesson videos where we get to dive a little bit deeper into the theory of what's going on behind the tune. And this week it was really cool, like trying to figure out all the different modes and the different keys and the scales that we were working with for just this one tune, because in the B section of this one we go to a lot of different places, right? There's some interesting changes in the harmony. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. I hope you guys check that out, and we got the backing tracks and the transcriptions for that as well. But that's what's been going on Patreon. But there are some other cool things that are happening around the mandolin world. I hope you guys have seen this here. I don't know if you guys know Andrew Marlin, but he's an incredible mandolin player, songwriter, vocalist, who plays with Mandolin Orange. They've been doing so well recently, but I think it was maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, he released an instrumental record called Buried in a Cape, which is a really awesome record. It's so good. Got all original tunes on there. Killer band. It's like Christian Settlemeyer playing fiddle. Eli West is on guitar. A few other amazing musicians too. And it's a cool title, Buried in a Cape. I think it was in reference to John Hartford. There's this crazy story about how John Hartford had like a Batman cape, and I think like his wife, when he passed away, they kept an open coffin in their house for a while, and they used this Batman cape to kind of cover up the coffin. And when they took him to the coroner, or to the to the place where he was buried, they basically embalmed him with the cape on him, because they knew who he was and figured he wanted to be buried in a cape. So he actually was buried in a Batman cape, which is hilarious. It's so fitting to who John Hartford was. But anyways, I digress. There's 2 new records now from Andrew Marlin. He's doing a double record release in February, which I'm so excited about. The first one is called The Witching Hour, which will be out, I believe, February 5th. And then Fable and Fire, which is going to come out like 2 weeks later on February 19th. So definitely worth checking those out. Again, killer lineup. Jordan Tice playing guitar. Christian Settlemeyer, again, is playing fiddle. Brittany Haas is playing some fiddle too. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm stoked about that one there. So lots of other cool stuff. I don't know if it's out yet, but Sierra Hull is also releasing a new EP of the original Weighted Mind sessions from, I guess it was about 8 years ago when she recorded. She first recorded the record with a full band with like electric guitar and drums and all sorts of stuff. And they're releasing, I think, 5 or 6 of those tracks now, just as a kind of fun anniversary, because I guess the record was released about 5 years ago now, which is kind of hard to believe. Another great album to check out here. So that's what's been going on in the mandolin world, but I'll come back here to see how you guys are doing. So we'll be playing some tunes in a little bit here, but let me know if you guys have any questions about what you've been practicing, anything that I can be of service for, or anything that I was talking about at the beginning of the stream here that didn't make sense. I'm sure I'm just so excited, just kind of like running my mouth about a bunch of stuff. So happy to cover anything like that again. Let's see, just catching up with a few things here. Christopher Flake says, can you describe the muted strings technique used on the second time around on Apple Butter? Oh yeah, that's a great question. A lot of mandolin players don't do that. I don't know of too many, at least. And I think it's more of a guitar approach. I think I probably got the idea from David Greer. If you hear him play, there's a really cool recording of him playing old Ebenezer Scrooge, which hopefully we might take a look at that on the site at some point. But it's a big, I forget how many parts, like 4 or 5 part tune that Bill Monroe wrote, and they do an amazing guitar bass version of it on a record called True Life Blues. Excuse me, I need to drink some more coffee, I think. But that record actually, I think it won a Grammy a long time ago. It was back when Bill passed away. It was a tribute record to him. And but yeah, he just does some really cool muted guitar strums on there. David Greer does, where he's kind of playing through a melody with the butt of his palm, actually muting some of the strings as he's playing them. I don't even know if I can play Apple Butter anymore, but that's kind of the approach that I was using, where trying to get maybe a different texture, a different timbre out of the instrument to make things sound a little bit different. It's hard when you're the only instrument playing to keep things interesting, and that's something that doesn't get explored too often. Like, how can you use a different color texture or a different sound on your instrument to create something interesting or something that keeps the listener engaged? So that's kind of what I was going after. If you want to try it out, scales could be a good way to practice that. Coming back to scales here. But seeing if you can mute it just enough where you don't hear that bright resonance of the open strings or the strings that you're playing, but you're hearing the pitch still clearly, but you can't really hear the metal of the string quite as much. That's what I'm going for, at least. Just take some experimentation, but that's great. That's a great question, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, man. Rapinto says, what nut width are your mandolins? That's a good question. I don't honestly know. I'm not too much of a gearhead as far as like knowing the specs for the mandolin. I probably should, though. That's something I need to get better at. But this nut right here was originally made by Oliver Pidius, who made this mandolin here, and then I just got kind of a different hybrid E string I don't even know exactly what this is, to be honest. I think it's like some type of mother of pearl that I got this luthier Dan Voigt to put underneath the E string side to give it a little bit more kind of beef as I play on the high end of the mandolin here. I think it does just kind of make the E string sound a little bit more solid, or feels like you can really dig into the strings a little bit more. But yeah, you should check out Oliver's site. I think he has all of his specs on there. I think it's like apidiousmandolins.com. By the way, awesome builder. I think he's now accepting new requests or new orders for his mandolins. He's not been taking orders for a long time, so this might be a good chance to get one if you're interested. They're really affordable for like an awesome hand-built mandolin. So yeah, thanks for joining, man. I appreciate you being here. So we got a few more here. David Mayhark says, yes, the backing tracks are awesome. I'm so glad. Thanks so much for checking that out. Yeah, we've been having fun with that. I actually have like a bass over here that's just been being put to use for the first time in a long time, which has been great. I've been working on my bass skills and enlisted the help of Tabitha to loan some guitar and banjo to these tracks as well. So that's what you're hearing there. I'm so glad. I'm glad Lucy's enjoying them as well. Chris Flake, awesome. Neil, awesome. So glad. Well, maybe we'll try checking out some tunes here. I thought we would maybe brush up on a few of the tunes that we've been looking at here on the site. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, so if you're up for it, I thought maybe we could just play through a few tunes together at some different speeds. Maybe we'll warm up a bit slow. And since we've been working on this St. Anne's Reel tune a lot this month, why don't we just play it one more time? It's a great opportunity to try out some of the ideas we've been working on. And I definitely encourage you, like we were talking about in the lesson video for St. Anne's Reel, is to see if you can find the target notes for the melody and, play around with them. See if you can connect them together in different ways using your D major scale. And, just feel free to do something different over this tune with the melody as your reference. So if you're up for it, why don't we give this one a shot? Just to review the chords here, I think it's a good opportunity to play some open chords when you're the only mandolin player playing here. So if you're playing along, some great chords to use is this open D chord for the A and the D in the B section here. We got your open G chord, pretty standard. Again, I like this open A chord. It's like 2-2, open, open. And then there's a couple of tricky things in the B section here. If you remember, we've got a B minor chord, which, or maybe first I'll check out this E minor chord, which is a nice way to play it. It's just open, 2-2, open. I like to call that like the E minor squeeze, where you're just squeezing down with your index finger on the second fret for your D and your A strings. Nice. And then we also have this kind of descending bass line going on here, where on the end of the third line we have D over C sharp to a B minor. If you want to play that, that's great. I kind of like using this chop chord shape and just walking down the scale on your G string. So we go D, and then we keep our index finger, our middle finger in the same spot. Now we're playing a C sharp as our bass. And then you can play this 3-note B minor chord for your B minor on the second line there. It's a really great one. It's 4-4-5. So again, the progression is D, C sharp on the bottom, and then we have our B minor. And E minor, A, back to D for the end of that B section there. Let me find a good tempo for us. Maybe since we've been practicing it at 60 BPM, that might be a good spot for this one. See what that feels like this morning. It's weird how time and tempos, they're all dependent upon how much coffee you've had and what time of day it is. This feels pretty good. What do you guys think? Yeah, we'll give it a try here. So I'll kick us off with the melody, and then we'll take some turns as always. It'd be great. I'll play some chords. You just take a solo on the second time around. We'll trade back and forth maybe a couple more times, and then we'll play the melody together as a closer here. So here we go. Let's try this out. All right, your turn. Here we go. To the G chord. Back to D. Quick G, A, back to D. There we go. On to the B section. Here we go. So it's D, E minor, A, D over C sharp, B minor. All right, I'm gonna take it. Go. Here we go. Here we go. B section, here we go to E minor. All right, you guys ready? Let's play the melody together. Awesome. Nice work, folks. Hope you enjoyed playing that one. I'm glad to hear that that's your favorite tune, Alan. That's so cool. Learning a Clancy Brothers melody line too. It's right now. That's really awesome, man. Yeah, it's one of my favorite tunes as well. I think it's like one of those first tunes that I felt really comfortable on. And yeah, getting to play this with other people was really one of the main reasons I got hooked on bluegrass, is going to those jams and getting to do stuff like this in person. But hey, now we're doing it online. So thanks for hanging out. Why don't we try another tune while we're here? And since we've been looking at this one this week on Patreon and on YouTube, I thought this would be a good chance to try out what we've been doing here as well. This is a fun tune, right? I hope you guys have been enjoying playing it. It's definitely appropriate this morning here in South Carolina. It doesn't always get cold here, but it's pretty cold this weekend. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you're staying warm and warming up your fingers enough to play the mandolin here. But why don't we just jump right into this one here? We were talking about in that lesson video about how, there's a few different chord options for this one, right? Like the chop chords are a little bit intense, If you're looking for some open chords, I definitely recommend playing this A minor shape right here. It's kind of like the open A chord that we were playing for St. Ansriel, but I like adding in that minor third here for this song, just because it gives it a little bit more information to work with as far as like what type of chord you're playing over. And then again, your open G chord, that's great. And then here for the B section, we have a lot of chords to deal with, so buckle up for the B section here. First up, we have an A major, which, just to distinguish from the A minor, it might be a little bit better to play a full A major chord where you're playing 2-2-4 open, kind of changing that C natural from the A minor now to a C sharp to make it a real major chord. That's kind of the big feature to this tune, like we talked about earlier. I love how it just feels like there's a huge lift when you get to that B section. It's so different. Again, we've got a G chord after that A major, and then the last line here is where all the action happens, right? You have A minor, C, here's your open C chord, open 2, 3, open, your open D chord. Then for your E, here's a nice option. It's like 4, 2, 2, open. And then we just have that quick turnaround, A minor, G, A minor. So I know there's a lot going on. We'll just try it out, see how it feels. Maybe we'll bump this up to the intermediate speed here, and you guys can just follow along as you can. So this one goes, so it's a little bit faster there. See if we can hang on here. I'll give this a shot for you guys. Here we go. Here we go. A minor to G, A minor, G, back to A minor. And then we have that A major to G. A minor, C, D, E, A minor, G, A minor. Woo. A major again, G, A minor, C, D, E, A minor, G. All right, here we go. My turn. Nice work, folks. I hope you've been enjoying playing that tune again. It's a nice one, isn't it? Well, I see we're running a little bit out of time here. Let's come back over and answer some questions before we go here. If you guys have anything that's been on your mind this week on the mandolin, I probably don't know the answer, but I'll do my best to come up with something. And yeah, we got some questions earlier. I just wanted to check out here. So let's see. Dean Daniel says, "Hey David, just wanted to chime in and say what you're doing for the mandolin online is really great. Thank you for the inspiration." Oh, that's really kind of you, Dean. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. Well, I'm just grateful for a group of people to be a part of here on online while things are so crazy around the world. So I really appreciate you for checking out the videos, for just for checking out Patreon and all this stuff as well. You guys have been an incredible supporting community through this all. So we're gonna keep it coming too. Don't worry. I think even once touring starts back, if and when that does happen, we'll still be doing a lot here online. It feels like the world's kind of changed around this big event, so we'll be seeing a lot of each other, I'm sure. John Reichert says triplets. I love that, man. It's to the point. Triplets. And I think that's something I don't feel very comfortable with myself as well. It's another one of my goals this year, is just getting more confident, playing faster runs, and triplets is a huge part of that, right? And we've been talking a little bit about triplets on some of the tunes we've been looking at recently as an embellishment, but the triplets we've been doing have been all hammer-on or pull-off triplets, like in that tune Brilliancy. Like, I can't even do it anymore. How does he do it? Something like that, or where he does all these really interesting little embellishments as variations the second time around the tune. Or he does this, like, all those like string hopping things. That's one category of triplets that I feel somewhat confident in, just because they're a lot easier since you're not having to change anything about your right hand to accommodate for that extra note, right? You're just hammering on for the middle note of the triplet, or you're pulling off for that middle note. That way you can continue alternating with your right hand like we always do for eighth notes. So that's an easy way to get some triplets in. I say easy, but it's still pretty challenging, especially like when you're doing a lot of them back to back, like that one little passage. Pardon me while I practice here for a little bit. But check out that lesson if you want to work on those type of triplets. But there's kind of another category as well where in that Macedonia tune, we ended up learning the solos note for note, how Sam Bush and Mark O'Connor played them. I played Mark O'Connor's solo, and there's this triplet run I was having so much trouble with because he doesn't play the triplets like that. He just plays them all individually with the pick, and that's another level up that I'm just not quite as comfortable with. Like I can't even do it. I don't remember how exactly he played it. But where you're actually playing every single note with the pick. Something I'm trying to work on a little bit more. And some people get around it by doing like weird combinations of hammer-ons and pull-offs, like this kind of classic Chris Steele lick is something like that, where you're getting across multiple strings by hammering on basically and pulling off when you need to. That's just a fancy trick that you can use, but I wish I was more proficient in just expressing myself with triplets, no matter what it is, without having to pre-plan it out ahead of time. So long answer, but I hope to study up on this and share more with you guys soon. That's a great question, John. So catching up with a few other things here. Let's see. Oh, Mr. Koftraf says, by the way, that kid you had on Mandolin Mondays was off the charts playing Old Dangerfield. He wasn't he? He's great. Yeah, Wyatt Ellis. Such a promising musician. I'm really excited to see where he goes with the mandolin. He's only been playing for less than 2 years, honestly. He came to it right before the lockdown happened, and he hasn't really been to any bluegrass events in person, but he's just been studying online and taking some lessons from some great mandolin players like Jake Workman and Sierra Hull, and just became a Gibson endorsing artist, which is pretty killer too. So he's got a bright path ahead of him, and yeah, excited to get to hang out with him and get to pick some tunes in person. Yeah, it's been fun. Like lots more stuff coming on Mandolin Mondays this year as well. Let's see. The Pelican says, I tried to stay with you on Cold Frosty Morning, but I had trouble with it. Yeah, I understand, man. There's a lot going on, and you don't have to understand all the theory behind a tune like that, because I think there's like helpful tools that you can use to get you started. That's the challenge. Like, you don't want the theory to get in the way of actually playing music, right? For me, I find it really helpful to come up with labels for stuff and to be able to identify what's going on by name and by shape. That way I can try to implement it better in the moment. But it takes a lot of thinking and a lot of time to get up to that point. So I don't know. What I'd recommend doing is, if you're improvising over that tune, start off with that A minor pentatonic shape, because like we said in that video, you can play that for the entire tune, no matter what chord is being played, because I guess the tune is so centered around that A minor, A major chord, and the minor pentatonic scale just sounds like pretty good in any of those situations. So if you're not familiar with it, just spend some time like playing that. Just play that up and down every time you pick up the mandolin. Try to burn it into your fingers, and then spend some time actually just noodling. That's all improvising is when you boil it down to the essentials. Is just playing something that comes off the top of your head. Improv is such a big topic too. It can be a little bit overwhelming, and just the idea of playing something unknown or undiscovered yet is crazy. It's like, how do you even do that? Like, and eventually you get to realize it's actually not like that. It's basically you're just learning all this vocabulary by the tunes you're playing, by the scales you learn, the arpeggios and all that, and then you're rearranging those ideas into new words or new sentences, just like you would with the English language. Like, as you do as a kid when you learn how to speak for the first time, you're just learning bits and pieces, and eventually you find how to string all those words together to create your own thoughts. So yeah, I just recommend trying that minor pentatonic shape first. Then once you feel like you've got that down, then move on to the Dorian mode, which is that minor sounding scale. But all it is basically the G major scale starting on your A note, right? Same group of notes, one sharp in your key signature, starting and ending with A, and then just play that up and down until it becomes absolutely second nature, until you can play it in your sleep. And then, yeah, just noodle. See if you can use all those notes in the solo for Cold Frosty Morning. It doesn't matter if it sounds good or not. It's just the idea of taking that plunge and trying something new. And I know that the other scales that we talked about in that lesson might be a little bit kind of crazy, like the Mixolydian mode, just for those 4 bars at the beginning of the B section, and then the even weirder melodic minor scale, which isn't really common in bluegrass at all. So if that's not your cup of tea, I totally understand. Even just those 2 scales, the minor pentatonic and then the Dorian mode, those are going to get you really far in this tune, and a bunch of other tunes as well. I'm hoping to look at a really cool tune sometime in the next month or so here on Patreon called Elzic's Farewell. I don't know if you've heard. It's like a... kind of another one of those tunes that's in that A Dorian mode. So that mode's going to come in handy for a lot of other tunes as well. I even think about Dorian sometimes when I'm playing like Over Jerusalem Ridge or a bunch of other tunes in the key of A minor too. But yeah, thanks for hanging and checking out the lesson though. I hope it was helpful, even though it's kind of tough to follow along in some of those kind of weird spots there. Let's see. We got a question from Rick Finn, and what's up, man? I hope you're doing well. I wish we could all be in Raleigh, North Carolina again, man. That would be so fun. I hope IBMA is going forward this year. It'd be great to get together and hang out there. So Rick asks, how do you keep your instrument humidified? And the short answer is I don't, which is sad. I probably should. But being in South Carolina, there's just not, I feel like there's not a whole lot of necessity for it, just because the humidity here, I'm actually in the basement right now too, where there's a lot more moisture in the air. It doesn't seem like it's really affecting the instrument that much, but I can definitely tell it when the instrument gets all the moisture sapped out of it. It definitely needs some humidification. Like whenever we were touring, we would go out west to Colorado, or even out to California, even I felt like it just being in that drier climate, I don't know, the whole instrument changed, right? The moisture gets sucked out of the wood. The action is lowered because the wood isn't as thick as it usually is, so the tension on the strings gets looser. The strings are a lot closer to the fretboard, which can cause buzzing. So I have to play around with the action whenever we go out there, which isn't that fun. I'm not that good at it. So what I do whenever we're in those low moisture situations, I use just like one of those green noodle dampits, I think they're called. It has a sponge in the middle of this little tube with holes that you can soak the sponge in, and stick it in the F-hole here and put it in the case overnight with that in there, so that the moisture is released little by little and the wood soaks it up. I've heard mixed reviews about those tools though. I had some people say not to use that because it actually doesn't really help the wood. Sometimes it can damage the wood if there's too much water in there. So watch out for that. I know Missy Raines had a problem with one of hers that she had for her bass, which was basically causing water spots in the bottom of her bass, which is not good. So there are some better ones probably from Diodario that uses like humidification beads and some gels that probably are a lot safer and a lot longer lasting than just water in a tube. There's even like fancy ones where you can get a humidifier detector to put in your case that will send notifications to your phone whenever it's getting like too dry or too wet or something like that. It's really interesting. But yeah, North Carolina might be a little bit different just because it's colder up there and you might run the heat a little bit more. So yeah, definitely check out some of those options there, Rick. Great to hear from you, man. Let's see. Catching up with a few others here. Francois says, can't always hang out with you on Saturday mornings, but it makes my day when I do. The crowd is not so bad either. I'm so glad you hang with us, man. Thanks so much for making the time. I know it's like there's a lot going on the internet these days, and I'm really appreciative just for you guys hanging out. We had like a lot of people with us today, which is really cool. So Bill Moore says, on the folded scale you did earlier, could you show where you shift as you go up? Yeah. So when I was playing the folded scales earlier on these positions, what I was trying to do is think about how when I first started these position scales, I would just play up a position and then down a position and then up the next position and down that position, then shift up to the next one. So I was always shifting on the G string. But just to make it a little bit more challenging for myself, I've decided that I want to try shifting both on the E string and the G string. That way I'm kind of practicing, I don't know, the modes a little bit differently. I can see how they link together in more than one way. So what I would do is play up the first position, then play up one extra note here on the B, and then go down this closed position, and then shift up to the next position on the G string, shift up on the E string to the next position, come back down, oops, something like that. Up on the G string, up on the E string, up on the G string. And then on the way back down, you can do the reverse where you're shifting back down, down on the G. So that's what it's like without the folded scale, but it's the same idea whenever you're working with this thirds idea where you're going up one position and then going up one more iteration on the E string and then back down and then shifting up for the next position on the G string. Shifting up one more on the E string. Shifting up on the G string. Up on the E string. Up on the G string. And then you can work your way back down the same way as we did before. So yeah, check it out. And that's a pretty advanced scale to play. If you're new to scales, I definitely recommend checking out all the stuff in the first position first. Even though I said I want to get past the first position, I still love playing in the first position because it's probably where like the majority, like 90% of whatever we play on the mandolin takes place. Like all these fiddle tunes are in this basic position where we're using those open strings for good reason, because it sounds great using those open strings. Like, it doesn't sound as good like even though those are the same pitches, it sounds way better to play down here. There's just a lot longer scale length for the strings to ring out, and it just is nice to have that resonance there. Yeah, Peter Griffin says Blackberry Blossom is a great folded scale example. That's so true. I was thinking of how this thirds idea kind of relates back to that big Scioto tune as well. I don't know, the melody feels like it's based around that interval, and it helps to see how you can use tunes as a way of exploring those little melodies, and in a way it kind of justifies playing these melodies. It's like, oh yeah, that's just the Blackberry Blossom motif. I can use that all over that tune, or I can use the third scale all over Big Scioto, because it kind of points back to the original source material. And Ben Apple asked if we have any good resources for learning theory and various scales. I don't at the minute, but this is something I've been talking about doing for a while, and I think we're actually going to make it happen. My initial plan was to do like this big 5 or 6 part series about how you can go from 0 to hero on your major scales, starting with like the first position or even single octaves first, and then working up to these position scales to feel more comfortable in different situations. So I might just have to make that happen, but there's other sorts of learning resources out there as well. You can check out like Peghead Nation or Artist Works. I think Tristan Scroggins has some stuff on at least chord theory and some other stuff. But yeah, check out Patreon if you're interested, and I'm sure there's going to be lots more coming soon. So Christopher Flake says, I don't understand problem with triplets, 2 octave scale and triplets, or what? Do you try downstroke on every third note? Okay, yeah. Good question there. So with triplets, again, there's multiple ways of approaching them, and another way of doing it is like kind of what you're mentioning, where you can change your pick directions to accent the first note out of every triplet. Because if you think about it, if you play all alternating notes, like I can't even do it. I need to work on this as well. But like, if you change your pick strokes where you're having downstrokes on the third or on the first out of every 3 notes, it kind of works out like an Irish jig, like but I wouldn't, even though that's like a triplet undercurrent, you're feeling the beat in 3, I wouldn't call those triplets necessarily, because triplets are usually referring to going from duple meter to a group of 3 notes. So if you're in like 4/4 time, if you have a group of 3/8 notes, that takes the same amount of time as 2/8 notes. And going from one to the other is really where the challenge is, because you have to change up your pick directions one way or the other. You could use that approach where you're using down, up, down, down, up, down, like I was doing for that jig there, but it actually creates more work for your right hand, so it can be challenging to play those triplets as fast as you might need to if you're playing over a fast tune, like, Cold Frosty Morning or whatever. So I prefer using like the hammer-on or the pull-off approach whenever I'm playing triplets, and then if I need to play them with the pick, I'll probably use alternating, just because it makes it a little bit more seamless to be able to play through all those notes and give yourself a fighting chance of not dragging. So yeah, maybe you find a different approach that works for you, Chris, though. I'd love to hear about it more. But let's see, we got Adam, man, just found this page, totally hooked, love the Monday series. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you joining us for this live stream. We're doing this every week at 11 a.m. Eastern, so put it on your calendars. We got lots more to cover here, and we got weekly lessons. We got one coming up for you very soon. I think we'll be posting this tomorrow. We're going to be looking at the Hangman's Reel, which is a killer 4-part tune that it's maybe a little bit more advanced, but there's a lot of fun features that anyone should try out on a tune like this. It's just such a marathon of notes, so we'll be checking that out. Let's see. Sindai says, quick and dirty and cheap humidifier. Put a small piece of damp sponge in a small Ziploc bag and toss it in your case. I love it, man. MacGyver. I love it. Yeah. Very cool. Let's see. Paul says, really bummed that I missed live streams 1 through 7. Are they still on your channel? Thanks. Oh, Paul, they're not on YouTube, but if you want to check them out, you can go over to Patreon, and all the tiers on Patreon get access to past live streams, so you can go check them out there if you're interested. And tune in next week as well. We'll be here for another hour or so talking about mandolin. Mike on the mandolin, what's up, man? It's been forever. I hope you're doing well. What do you feel is the biggest mistakes for beginners make when learning the mandolin? That's a good question. I hadn't thought about that too much. Maybe the biggest mistake is like if you're a serious player who's just starting out, like you really want to get good at the mandolin, I think the temptation is just to be a copycat of another mandolin player. Maybe at least that's me talking to myself. Like I always wanted to be Chris Thiele when I was growing up, just because he was the first mandolin player I heard, and I loved his style and loved everything that he did. And through some guidance of some really thoughtful teachers and some perceptive mentors, I kind of steered me away from that and showed me the wealth of other amazing music out there to learn from and be influenced by. So I'd say just as a beginning mandolin player, try to make sure that your input is broad. Make sure that you're listening to as much as possible. You're learning as much as possible from different sources, different teachers, different online videos, everything like that. Just because all those little bits will really, they'll compound. Like we talked about at the beginning of the stream, the compound interest of what those influences will do over your musical development will be monumental. It's so important. It's like that phrase, you are what you eat. It's kind of true as a mandolin player. You are what you listen to. You are what you really love. And so the more you listen to different stuff and find other things that you love, you're going to take bits and pieces of that and make your own artistic voice. So I don't know, that's just a thought that came to mind, but that's a great question, Mike. I hope you're doing well. Love to catch up with you sometime soon here. Well, unfortunately, I think we're running out of time for this week, and I just want to say, hey, thanks so much for hanging. I hope you enjoyed the tunes, you enjoyed the talk, all the nerdy talk about scales and theory and stuff, and hope it was helpful as well. I just challenge you guys to keep up the good fight. Just keep playing every day. That's the most important part about getting better on the mandolin, and just try to enjoy it. It's like I have to remind myself, like, oh yeah, I love playing the mandolin. I love practicing. And every time I practice, it's like, oh yeah, I should be thankful. It's like, oh, I get to play mandolin every day. And I especially feel fortunate getting to do this for a living, and getting to make this my main focus for my job and for just my day-to-day life, which has been really fun. So thank you guys so much for being a part of it, and I hope the journey is fruitful for us all. We're gonna have a lot of fun this year. So join us next week. Be sure to check out the Patreon page at the link below. If you want a Mandolin Mondays mug, check out the link in the description as well. I've got all sorts of cool Mandolin Mondays themed merch here, and we'll keep pressing it. We'll see you guys soon, and I'll talk to you later.